of our forum. But now I am delighted to welcome back onto the stage our host for the last 2 days, the European Commissioner for Cohesion and Reforms, Elisa Ferreira. She's been sitting and listening to everything that's been said. We'll now hear her closing reflections as...
Well, thank you very much, Jackie. And I'm absolutely sure that no one among this huge audience would like to be in my place, try to make a kind of a summary of everything that we heard. I think it's impossible. Don't ask me to do it. I think the best outcome, the best takeaway is in fact what we all listened to, the kind of food for thought that we got from this very intense, very substantial discussion. And on the other hand, the energy, the capacity that was shown during these 2 intensive but amazing days. Nevertheless, you asked me to try to draw some conclusions. And as a big, major conclusion, what I would like to share with you is my conviction that the basic message that we take from this meeting is that cohesion policy works, has been working. It has got to be kept. It has got to be reinforced, in particular because we are in front of us expecting, and we know that it will happen, lots of new challenges. Of course, it's the challenge of European competitiveness. It's the challenge of having to create resilience because new crises will come. It's the challenge of energy transition. It's the challenge of how to accommodate and under which conditions we are going to manage aging. But above all, in the short term and probably more visible than anything else, the enlargement. So my message would be that all of us go outside this circle, go outside the converted and speak out. And speak not only, a lot of you are politicians, not all, but all of you are citizens. So it's important that we speak with each other. It's important that we prepare the future. And we have a unique opportunity in this period that is coming of the European elections, and everybody is already thinking of the European elections. So I think cohesion policy, what we have done, the broad information that we shared, is the proof above anything else of how we have to hold together when we are facing all these changes, all these adaptations, all these risks, and when people feel very often that they are scared because they are under the impact of forces that they cannot control. This is the kind of difference between the everyday life and what happens and that you watch on TV, and it is war, and it is the speeches, and it is Europe. Cohesion policies on the ground is what has helped you to find a job, is what supported you during COVID, is what helped you to have a better school, is what helped you to have clean water in your tap. It's so concrete, it's so close to people. And it is the most visible symbol of how it is important that we keep together, that in fact we are all together with each other. And so I think this is in fact what I would like to ask you as a takeaway to share. And on the other hand, we have got to make this policy be translated into simple things that only each of you know when you go back to your region or to your municipality or to your national mediatic space, what have we been doing, how we improved the quality of life. It is also important, and this was shared, that this objective of giving a chance all over Europe, wherever you are, is not something that is in the European agenda, and I think this is another takeaway. I think it's important to start questioning the governments, how and in which position they situate the priority of having a balanced growth inside their country. Because we all agree that a balanced country is a more resilient one. Where is, when you speak about development, apart from the periods of electoral campaigns, because then everybody speaks about the areas that are forgotten, but in a normal circumstance, when you are preparing your program, what is the role that is occupied by the balanced development of the country? And also, I would also underline that cohesion cannot be a topic that the European Council discusses once every 7 years when it negotiates the financial framework. It has got to be something that is much, much closer to the development agenda that is often discussed, not only at a macroeconomic level, but also at the spatial level where the income, the expenditure, the investment actually occurs. This is reason why, because of all these circumstances, that in fact I launched a debate in the previous forum about the future of cohesion, because it was so important to make it more visible, to make a clear state of the art of what was cohesion doing and not doing. And in fact, we ended up with a very, very interesting network of people that are experts, people that are engaged, and that were driven and stimulated by this group, the high-level group. And I want to thank again Professor Andrés Rodrigues Pose, all the members of the group, and I met a lot of them here, because their reflection when they produced the high-level group report, was really an important contributor to the 9th cohesion report. But I don't want only to thank them. I want to thank all the contribution that came from the European Parliament, and Marcos Rocha is here. Thank you, Marcos. But it was really important to have your contribution, the contribution of the Council, the contribution of the Committee of the Regions, and we had the luxury to have here two of the rapporteurs, Vasco and Emil Bock. The Economic and Social Committee, their contribution, and thank you very much to Oliver. My thanks also to, I think it's 20 member states, numerous regions, the Länder, that organized debates and that brought the cohesion policy into the front line of the political discussion, and also in a constructive way to make suggestions for the future. This has helped us to shape the 9th cohesion report, the report that is now at your disposal. And my initial presentation was a kind of aperitif in order to show to you the amount of information that you have inside that report, that combined with all the other elements, I think it's a fantastic basis for our future discussion. I brought in and for the future of cohesion policy. So it is something that, in fact, I tried to illustrate. I showed 2-3 maps, but of course, I wanted really to underline, and I'm very glad that it was mentioned in the last debate, the amount of information that you have and that helps you to understand better what is the actual static and dynamic situation in the different regions of Europe, with the information that is objective, that is factual, but that will, I hope, help you also to devise a more substantive strategy for the future. because there are elements, I showed, for instance, the climate one, the impacts of climate. Of course, social poverty, the risk of poverty, is a very, very detailed chapter in this report. If you want gender, gender is really an important aspect that I was wanting to share with you, because the absurd circumstance that women are, in statistics, in same statistics, often more qualified, more trained than men, but then the weaker the region, the less they participate in the labor market and in the process of decision making. So this is really the best qualified citizens are kind of kept aside in a process where this quality was more needed because it's the weakest regions. This is just one aspect, but then you have the situation in terms of where innovation and research is distributed. You have information on the network of roads, of railways, you have the quality of the public services. So you have really a huge amount of information, and I hope this will be a kind of good legacy for the development of the development strategy. And I would like to outline the three aspects. The first one is exactly this information that has got to be translated in local and regional kind of concerns of people. The other one is to recall what I said in the opening words of the political content, because it is, and it was said, it is democracy. If you are talking about democracy, democracy is not only to have the right to vote, it's the right to be informed, to have a life, to be educated, to have access to information, to have access to basic goods such as water, such as transportation. This is democracy. And another aspect that I think is very, very important is, in fact, how we prepare to retain and to help our young people. Of course, we all are aware of the old age people, but we need to have a special care if we want to have and to retain our young, most qualified people, because it is with them that we can really trigger a true development, future-oriented agenda. So we have got to keep our focus on education, on training, on retraining, but also on the role of medium-sized cities, of villages. What can they offer in order to rebalance the growth that often is not provided in the big centers, where people think they can find a job and then they cannot live in those big agglomerations due to costs of congestion, costs of real estate, costs of housing, and the imbalance between those costs and the actual salary that is paid even to qualified people. So, having said this, it is also important to keep present in our minds what is, as Ivan was mentioning, the cost of non-cohesion, and what kind of discontent we would have in Europe if cohesion was not there. So, cohesion is a builder, cohesion is the cement, but it is important also to make sure that this cement doesn't break up when we enlarge, when we deepen, and we are permanently enlarging and deepening the European Union. The second aspect that I would like to underline as a takeaway is, in fact, the contribution that cohesion policy is giving to the European goals and to the European policies. And the most important one is probably one that was debated here and that is very present in the high-level group and in the words of Andrés. It's, in fact, the impact in competitiveness in Europe. Because we cannot leave part of our population idle. We cannot leave part of our territories abandoned, because this is a loss for the overall wealth of Europe. If you have regions that, with a little bit of support, they start creating jobs. What we are talking about sustainable tourism. We are talking about the role of the archaeological development of certain regions. We are talking about location in certain regions with very good quality of research centers. Research based on, and there were some examples, on the research on wood, research on food, research on agriculture. Also, of course, research in high-level satellite things. But how can we add value? And this requires, in fact, this capacity to read the territory and to decentralize to the level of the territory everything that can help to adapt the policies to the needs of the territories. And this ends up very naturally in something that is very essential, is the quality of the institutions, the quality of the politicians, the quality of the regional responsible people, and also at the central level, the capacity to recognize that one size doesn't fit all. And often the central level is not capable of understanding the details of a bottom-up approach that is needed. So we have got to be very careful when we talk about targets, about objectives, because this also requires a very qualified, namely public administration, but not only, qualified institutions, be it universities, schools, mayors. And I find this very important also when we look at the overall of Europe, because we have got to use these assets when we manage transition. And transition is all over. The weaker regions have probably more easy to understand transitions because a lot goes into infrastructural support. But also the more developed areas, they need to be supported probably with more sophisticated instruments, such as financial instruments, proportionally less grants, of course less support because they can support themselves, but they need guidance, they need support. The transition regions need technical support to get out of the stagnation that some of them are facing. And so I think adapting the right policies in order to choose the right instruments is a very sophisticated thing, and on which we cannot go into anything more different than the difference among the different regions. And of course, if we are talking about reform policies and reforms that come along, one of the needed reform is, in fact, to foster this process of a minimum adequate level of decentralization, recognition and training, and preparation of other levels that really can help to deliver the best with the instruments and the money that we have. Having said this, it is also very important that when we are going through all these transitions that have got to be monitored and tackled and addressed, that in fact we, and this is, also followed by a demand for better performance, that in fact we understand that at this moment the biggest investor, public investor across Europe in greening investments and in climate investments is nothing else than cohesion policy. So when we talk about the green policy of Europe and the transition, we are talking about cohesion policy. At least 1/3 goes exactly to this target. The third argument that I would like to leave with you, and I finish with this, is in fact the need to be up to date. And up to date means to the policy to be capable of being more flexible, more innovative. We have shown this flexibility. So I think introducing flexibility, I already mentioned the need to have a counterpart that is the quality of the proposals that come from the regional level and from the national level, so that we can have stable targets and milestones. But when we are talking about flexibility, I think we can really build on it. We are already building on it, but also don't forget, and the debate when there was the Carole was very, very interesting, because she was saying, being a French, what I'm telling is that also member states, also municipalities, also the regional level has got to simplify. And we have got to go to the other end of the story and see it as a potential beneficiary and see the kind of process they have got to go through. But having said this, simplification also requires common understanding at the level of the auditors and at the level of everybody that has got to check the quality of what is done. So there is a cultural change that needs to be shared across, so that in fact we don't have some criteria, and the example that was given by someone that is a doctor, a medical doctor, illustrates something that we really have to address, how to simplify without losing control. Because if you lose control, and if we end up with the risk or the perception that the money is not used for the best purposes, this one negative example can be fatal for the cohesion policy. And I call your attention in relation to this, because it's really something that is very painful, is to see the rate of fraud that we have to deal with is below 1% after all the recoveries that we do. We are always under a lot of pressure. Our colleagues, Temis and the others, are always under a very, very strong pressure. Even myself, we were together in the European Parliament responding, and often the simplification is not, or objective is not shared to the same level, under the same kind of criteria by the different entities that are very welcomed, because this gives us a lot of strength. Having said this, in fact, it is very, I think it became very evident that we have got to look forward with something that I would synthesize in a kind of a paragraph or a sentence that basically says that I even tried to write it down, so that an unreformed policy is a risk to Europe's convergence. But a reform that doesn't respect cohesion, DNA and identity is a risk to Europe's unity. And this, I think, synthesizes what we have to keep and what we have to adapt, because we cannot throw the baby with the bathwater, and this policy performs, works well, so please make sure, because I won't be in this job, but you will be in the future, so please make sure that in fact you keep the essential aspects of the policy. That doesn't mean rigidity, that it means adapting to make it more efficient, more performant, but not to throw the baby away with bathwater. So first, by using evidence of implementation and impacts and proving that how the policy works. Second, by showing that cohesion policy delivers the European goals. It's competitiveness, is green transition, is innovation, is modernization. Third, by embracing modernization and adaptation. We all want our policy to be modern, to be updated, but we want our policy to remain. And in fact, I have been doing this job for 5 years, but I started in this kind of policy a long time ago. I have seen the policy change, the adaptation to different circumstances, and I have seen the benefits. I would like, before I finish, to thank everybody. I have met a lot of you when I visited. I tried to visit weak regions in all the countries of Europe. I hope I will do it until the end of this mandate. I learned immensely. I was incredibly welcomed by a lot of you. Thank you. You still see the pictures. Thank you so, so much. I learned a lot. It was amazing. And I got the impression by the end of all these visits that of the wealth of the energy that we find in the most decentralized places across Europe. And even in those places, I have seen Cohesion work. So I think have all of you in this room. Let us pass this vision, this understanding, and let me finish after thanking all of you for being here, thanking in particular all those that were on stage. Jackie, I want in your person to thank all the masters of ceremony, which is really a difficult job, and you do it perfectly. And I want also to thank everybody that is behind the stage, the people that manage lights, that manage films, that made us really have a very lively and a very professional kind of event, and in particular the interpreters, without which we would be not able to speak each of us in our own language. And in particular, allow me to thank the people from DG Regio, in the person of Temis, of Peter, that is somewhere, Peter Bekovic, that is somewhere around, Ana Maria, people from my office, Hugo Sobral, also the people that are sitting there, in particular Marta Pilati, that was in charge of all the connections with this event. And so I wish you all the best in a cohesive, strong Europe. Thank you so, so much.
Commissioner, can we also thank you very much indeed for your passion, for your commitment to the policy, and for all the hard work you have done over the last 5 years and for the many years before in many different hats. Before we go, ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to add my thanks to the speakers, my fellow moderators, and most of all to all of you for coming and being with us. Have a good evening, safe journey home. Goodbye.